Hey, my name is Patrick Lovell, and I'm a producer. I'm also a muckraking journalist, and a muckraking journalist is a throwback to a previous time in the history of the United States where independent journalists would go deep inside both corporate and economic corruption to try to flush out truths that mirrored exactly what everybody in society understood so that we could actually elevate in order to form a more perfect union. I think most of us would like to believe that our society is run by a democracy, that we all have equal accountability, that we all have an equal stake in the outcome of how our government operates of, by, and for the people. But unless you've been living on Mars, you know that's absolute nonsense. I've been a producer for a long time. And so what that means is I've been involved with Hollywood, I've been involved with film, television, action sports, entertainment, mainstream sports, across the board, bringing great stories to light for over 2 decades. But it wasn't until I experienced the 2008 great financial crisis that threw my life upside down and inside out that would change my life forever. I started pulling on threads that led me to broader truths and more insane truths than I could ever possibly imagine were possible. And it turned my life and my world inside out. But I got there through incredible work, through incredible relationships, incredible resources, and incredible determination that literally involved not only north of 50 people working with me, but resources beyond your comprehension to be able to pull these truths together that revealed the hierarchy of the largest criminal conspiracy and cover up in history that we dismantled, pulled the curtain back, unpacked, whatever metaphor you want to use to be able to illustrate and determine top to bottom and back again exactly how this horrific corruption operates. And so we've been in this kind of maelstrom, like everybody else has, of trying to get these truths to the people that need to hear it, which is literally all 330 million of us. Because what it does is it reveals exactly who we are and how we got here. But unfortunately, we're under this incredible tidal wave of misinformation that has drowned the truth in an ocean of madness and lies. And I am going to break through with the team that has come to my side, come hell or high water, to penetrate what is nothing but a giant racket of deception in order to, in order of magnitudes beyond our wildest comprehension. The way I kind of look at it right now is it's a free-for-all. That the system itself, which really is an ultimate betrayal of the professional class that used their incredible education and experience as professionals to be able to know how to backdoor loopholes, to be able to provide dark money into places that create political influence. It's a feedback loop, and it's a vicious feedback loop at that. But ultimately, it's called corruption. Now, it can work a myriad of ways in a myriad of different places, but what I am trying to reveal to the world, particularly the United States, really, I don't care about the world as much as I do the United States from this perspective, because the whole world is basically involved with the same thing. But for those of you who have mentioned to us on social media and a variety of other places who kind of can't get out of your own way, that it's really simple. At the end of the day, Federal Reserve Act 13.3 was used illegally to backdoor trillions of dollars to a corrupt financial system that got that way through its own criminal rot, which means that we've been hijacked and replaced by a shadow power that is nothing less than a criminal syndicate. I call it corporate fascism undergirded by a criminal syndicate, but it's just simply deceptive acts and practices, and it's not rocket science, it's racketeering. I'm the only one who can actually put all of these truths together in a way that doesn't make me walk on water, but I'm a vector to be able to get you to the people in the know that have the ability and the experience to actually turn the tables on corruption if only tens of millions of us were solidified and walking in the same direction. And I believe, quite frankly, that those people could consist of everybody on the left or the right, basically anybody below the line who isn't caught up in the grift and benefiting from corruption, which is 99% of us. The bottom line is it's an existential crisis. And the nature of media, the infinite amount of ways that people can get information immediately to you is confusing, it's overwhelming, and quite frankly, it's wrong. The worst part of it is that those that we rely on, the institutions of credibility, whether it's honestly the biggest, journalistic outfits in the country that have incredible resources, like the New York Times or the Washington Post, they're in on it. MSNBC, NBC, Fox, and then all of the mainstream stuff from there. I mean, it's beyond comprehension how ridiculous it is that I am the only one who will let you know how this system and this engine works and how to fix it. So, look, I think we all understand that the United States is presumed a democracy. I think most of us were taught that we had the American Revolution to overthrow tyranny, to create three branches of government, equal but separate, so that we'd have balance of power, so that we wouldn't end up with tyranny, because the founding fathers said, here's a democracy if you can keep it. And of course, they understood the fallibility of human nature. Most of us can understand that under certain circumstances, especially if you are leveraged and desperate, might become complicit in corruption. Come on. We all know this is a possibility. But what happens in this insane cesspool of misinformation that we're all in the midst of is simply that anybody can put anything out there at any given time, which then puts, for example, and this is what's insane, is it's created basically a race to the gutter. Because, for example, the New York Times, and they've completely, failed. Their credibility is nothing. Look at all of the, celebrities that were involved with crypto and FTX madness. Their credibility means nothing. Both of our political parties, although I have a preference, I do recognize the fallibility of both. Bottom line is, what you're looking at is the new robber barons versus the new Confederacy. And those who have power, money, resources, basically use media to make sure that you don't understand how the power works, because they're in a massive struggle for power, not unlike Game of Thrones. And you got to think of our government, quite frankly, if you think about Congress, you think about the White House, you think about the Supreme Court, that's all, well, if you can win those three apparatuses, you're going to also win the central bank, the Iron Bank. All of it is the Iron Throne. And you can understand, if you watch Game of Thrones and if you're a big fan of that monumental series, that that's exactly how power works. We don't have a democracy. What we have is an illusion based on what I call a corporate fascist state undergirded by a criminal syndicate. And how do I know that? Well, I've spent literally 13 years putting all of the elements together where we were able to, because we had the resources and the tenacity and just quite frankly, the will, and we're good at what we do. In fact, better than anybody that exists at telling the truth, because nobody is telling the truth. Because I am the only person that will bring you the intersection of it all. Federal Reserve Act 13.3 was used illegally to backdoor trillions of dollars to a corrupt financial system that got there based on their own criminality, that destroyed millions of people and used our judicial system to bulldoze millions of people illegally. That never ended. It's continued forward, but now it's splintered into a myriad of ways. And ultimately, what you need to understand is that Federal Reserve 13.3 and quantitative easing are just simply a financial apparatus that has enabled the multinationals and the ultimate power brokers that, when I'm talking about rich, I'm talking about 0.001% of the population to game everybody else. That's the inverse perverse of democracy. And quite frankly, it's the inverse perverse of capitalism. A lot of people are blaming capitalism out there. Capitalism is fire. Do you know the difference between fire and arson? That's what we're talking about. It's not rocket science, it's racketeering. So the United States was born from 13 colonies that came together in an affiliation to find the courage to basically try to heave ho what was the world's foremost global empire at the time, that was spearheaded by King George III, but ultimately the apparatus was what you might call the oligarchs of Parliament at that time. And then, of course, the corporate sector, which at that time was the East India Trading Company. And then, of course, the military power, which were the Redcoats and its Navy. All of which was absolute power to basically create tyranny that our founding fathers galvanized to defeat. They overthrew the burden of tyranny to create liberty and justice for all. And of course, there was a lot of problems that followed because mankind is flawed. But the bottom line is, we are in 2022. We've had thousands of years of lessons to arrive at ultimately what happened in 1776 that led to the birth of the nation in 1787, and then all of the different times in our nation's history after all of the horrible things that we've done, but the victories through the Civil War to emancipate, the Emancipation Proclamation, not to mention defeating fascism, and then ultimately civil rights. So nothing has ever been perfect throughout our history, but there's always been an American ideal, and we've got to galvanize to make that happen again. Now, this is going to sound crazy because I'm no one with resources. I don't have a national following. I only have the revelation of the largest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in history, and I've got all the answers. So we're going to try to elevate this movement to purge corruption under a presidential run in which I'm asking you to donate $13 in commiserate with the original 13 colonies that revolted against tyranny. Only in this particular scenario, we're revolting against corruption. We all know to get our voice across and over and above the madness of the sea and lives, we've got to do two things simultaneously. One, we've got to connect with the millions upon millions of victims of corruption who don't understand how it works. We've got to somehow wake them up, reorient their minds, and try to get them into a situation where they understand that what we're presenting is fighting for them. Because we have got to somehow relinquish this iron grip of corruption that has a death grip on everything. And they're going to destroy everything because those that are actually fighting for the Iron Throne will stop at nothing and have proved these last 20 years, whether it's 9/11, whether it's 2008. I don't know what the hell to think about the COVID era, but I certainly know what happened in the financial arena as all of these things were going on. And that's what I'm trying to reveal to you. We've always said, follow the money if you want to understand how things work. And that's what I've done in a very significant way. What I'm asking you to consider is we're creating a campaign to purge corruption because, unfortunately, I'm the only guy willing to bring it to the world's attention. I'm the only one who's got the answers. I'm the only one who can actually bring in all of the people who have the answers, but we need millions of people to galvanize to create the critical mass that has the power to break the iron grip of corruption, to put the right guys in the system, to throw the table over on the bastards that are playing everybody. I could go on and on and on. I've got freaking probably hundreds of hours of information out there on the internet if you just check it out. We've got The Con at www.thecon.tv. We've got free information on YouTube if you go to Patrick Lovell Truth Bombs The Con. I revealed through an 11-hour filibuster the ultimate revelation in a 10-hour upheaval that we call Deception Owns You. And then I've got the new Untouchables available as well. I don't know. I could go on and on. I didn't have a speech prepared. I'm just trying to break through the madness of noise and lies and pollution, distortion, and everything else to vector your brain to understand that somebody does have the goddamn truth, and I can force this thing through this insane time of corruption and perversion, disinformation, and everything that's going on, if only you will lean into it with us. We're asking for your support. We're asking you to share. We're asking you to donate. $13. That's it. Bernie Sanders, I think, asked people to provide $29 to his campaign, and at the time where he had a ton of momentum was in 2016 when he declared that Wall Street's business model is fraud, but he pivoted and he went into universal health care and universal tuition and everything else, and he just basically left the corruption for somebody else to figure out, and he's been talking about it in platitudes ever since. I've got the details. I know exactly who did when and how, and what they got away with, and what we got to blow open to be able to actually create the revolution that's necessary. Now, you can fill in your own blanks of what I mean by revolution. I would like to see the revolution of awareness, the evolution of consumerism, and quite frankly, of citizenship, to where it's like suddenly an informed populace equipped with the facts has the power to hold its government to account. That's what I'm asking you to support. We could do it with your help. The fact is, do you want to help yourself? Onwards and upwards.